start? Data and design. I think we've been speaking about data a lot. There's been a talk about data, then we move to Meta, we move to AI, but everything turns around that how we can turn these consumer insights into products which will. Now, I represent a brand called WGS, and for us, data is like regular food for us to consume and try to interpret that. But what we are doing today and we are sitting today is a lot of data, immense. But if we have so much of data, the question still remains why sometimes products fail. And nowadays, many products fail. So the gap is not about data, it seems. It's about how do you translate that data. And that's the reason we have this exciting panel. And I'm very, very privileged and honored to be moderating this session. So thank you so much, Gartex, for this and Denim Talks for this opportunity. So let's understand one by one what is exactly this insight. So let's simplify this. So consumer insights can mean very different things at different levels of the value chain. So I'll ask each one of you, if in one sentence, you can just start with it, what consumer insights actually mean to you and what's its role for you today.
Good afternoon. So being a D2C brand at the Pant project, consumer insights are coming to us every day. And it's really important to truly understand the consumer's pain point. So whether it's like a fading or whether it's like a color fastness or any kind of product innovation that we eventually solve for, but it first comes through some problem or some pain point that we then have to listen to.
So for you, it's about identifying the pain points first.
Absolutely.
Kunal, what about you?
So I represent Spykar, and at Spykar we are one of the largest denim brands. We have close to over 300 stores all over India. So for us, consumer insights are not just taking trends that what consumer want. For us, insights are definitely what happens at the retail store level. It is just that. So we also check, mainly we check the velocity of sell-throughs. We sell what kind of fits are selling, what sizes are disappearing faster. And we also check that what the consumer is trying on, even if they are not buying. So for us, that is the actual insight what we want to look into.
So the actual consumer
Actual
is
consumer,
what your
yes,
insight.
absolutely.
Aamir, you sit at a very different level in this entire value chain. So for you, where is the consumer insight?
So me, this whole activity of consumer insight understanding is about really listening very sort of, there was a need for traditional clothing. So there was a manyavar, right? It didn't exist. A manyavar comes in and then you have this whole sort of new segment which is this occasion wear. Let's say in the FMCG industry, till Baba Ramdev came, there was, you didn't have this understanding. The top most FMCG companies didn't know that there was something like traditional medicine, which was also a unmet need of the consumer, right? So Baba Ramdev came with his brand and then took over this whole and created this new segment, right? So it is about listening to the consumer and then trying to cull out those unmet needs and then finding a solution.
Unmet needs is what works for you. Ashish?
Yeah, so rightly said by Udit, Kunal and Aamir sir. So insight, I just like to add on, because consumer insights keep on changing, with the geographical landscape, with age. If I talk about specifically to denim industry for that matter, like a market like Europe for us is more sustainability driven. So they would be, it's important to, customize or innovate your products accordingly because they're more sustainable. They want to feel good with what they wear. So similarly, a market like maybe North India, they're more trendy, they're more fashion. So they want more fashionable products. So more fashionable fits, more loud washes. So it's important to understand geographically or demographically, what is the taste of the customers, and accordingly you can customize your marketing campaigns or your product profile, etc.
So I think one thing is common for insights that you guys study insights a lot. It's not something which is just passing and we move on to the business. Now I'll start direct, Udit, with you first. That let's take an example because you are very product focused. Your business is built on the aspect of the product being the most superior element and the key element around which all decisions will be taken, right? If that's my understanding about Pant project. So is there any insight which has actually directly led you to find an innovative product and introduce into the market, which was like an insight you captured?
Absolutely. So last Black Friday, we had launched a pair of jeans. And as most of you guys know, you're always looking for the most beautiful fade on the jeans, right? Today we started to see comments on our Instagram saying that like after the first few washes, the jeans started fading. That should be a good thing. But we realized that people wanted to wear these jeans to work or to office. And so they wanted a no fade jean. And so we took that as an insight or an interpretation of the insight, which was saying is that your jeans are fading. And the Pant project interpreted it into a 30 wash, no fade, ink lock black jean. And this has turned into becoming a bestseller. So the way our product innovation happened was from that consumer insight, saying that this was a pain point, that the denim was fading. While typically it may be celebrated and become a hero, there is an option out there for a consumer to have which doesn't fade, and therefore we managed to disrupt the traditional market.
So, Kunal, does the similar thing apply to the retail lens as well? Have you seen something similar happening since you talk to the consumer at the retail store? Okay, both the mics are not working?
I think so. Yeah, so definitely we also look into such, we have a few examples like this. So what we generally see is that when there is a trend and when that trend is actually goes into the adoption of the product, there is a big gap in that. So we noticed that suddenly now the whole industry, I'm talking about denims, is moving towards a more comfortable fit. So we saw that change, and we saw that earlier, couple of years back, the super skinny and skinny used to sell a lot. Yet there are markets like Odisha and MP, there it yet sells, but the rest of the country has evolved into a more comfortable fit, which is slightly looser, the silhouette is slightly looser. So we have come up with two different new fits. One is called the Chico fit and one is called the Ikimen fit. And these two fits are absolutely with the trend analysis which was going on, and with that we really captured what the consumer actually wanted, and we completely changed our production cycle because that is the fit which is actually selling. So we got that from the analysis which was going on.
Okay. Ashish, I'll come to you and then I'll come to Aamir sir. So from a market and trend lens per se, when we talk about insight, how do you deal with speed? Because by the time these insights, because they had real-time insight with them from the customer, Udit got it from Instagram and social, Kunal got it really at the retail store from a brick and mortar structure. But for you, when you look at, by the time these insights get implemented, we see the consumer has actually moved on. So where does, from your kind of work, because you are at a different level of the supply chain, how does this impact you from a market point of view?
Yeah, so since we are more into a B2B segment, for us, customer insight is, we try to work very closely with the leading designers, in various brands we work with. So we try to get, idea on the trends which they are looking for, or the concept which are going on in the market, and accordingly we customize and, our product profile. Also what we do is we try to collaborate with the supply chain, both backward and forward. That also gives us insights into what is new on fiber front, what is new on, in terms of washes, in terms of. So accordingly we had to customize our products accordingly, and that is where, since we are a fully vertical company, from cotton to finished product, so it makes us easy. We are more flexible, I would say, in terms of adjusting to different fibers and technologies, and that is where we bring speed into the developments.
So it's technically working well for you from a manufacturing.
Yes, so far,
but
yes.
Aamir sir, there would be certain pain points into this. What Ashish just mentioned, that what you think are the biggest constraints when you're executing these insight-led products. For them, they can still scale because they are more agile in their operations. But from your point, from manufacturing standpoint, where do you think we fail?
So manufacturing is an outcome of a ecosystem collaboration. I mean, you can't do anything in isolation, right? So you really always need ecosystems to come together and to collaborate. I will give you an example. We were working with Levi's very closely in my previous, assignment, and Levi's based on consumer insight, right? Which is they said that look, our consumer is into commuting. So commuting is that need. So a need identification is commuting. Now for Levi's consumer, this commuting as a need has changed over the last 100 years. 100 years ago, the consumer used to commute on a horse, right? Then he started commuting on a carriage, horse-drawn carriage. And today the consumer is commuting on multiply like motorcycles. So this need is commuting. So how do you make your consumer's life convenient while commuting? So they said, okay, let's start collaborating, and then let's understand as that, look, when my consumer is commuting, so they said that, look, if he's commuting on a cycle and he receives a phone call, so somehow if he can just tap and he get a call, he can hear the call, then he's not disturbed and he can keep driving. So then Levi's reached out to various sort of, partners. So we were one of those. And then there was this whole ecosystem collaboration where Apple, Levi's and ourselves, we got together and we put together a garment which was known as a commuter jacket, right? And where while riding a bicycle or on a skateboard, the consumer or commuter could receive calls, take directions by simply tapping on the cuff of the garment, right? So it's all about collaborations, it's all about ecosystems evolving to be able to deliver an innovation, because today's time you cannot really deliver an innovation on your own. Say for example in India, in the denim industry today, there's a great feedback that you're getting from your consumers that they want softness, they want touch, they want sheen, they want feel. Now for that to happen, you need to collaborate with fiber suppliers, yarn suppliers, new age fibers like new blends and new yarn. So for that, you have to have that ecosystem. So that's the only sort of, if I can say, stumbling block, or that's what you really need for innovations to come through.
But see, what you're saying, Aamir sir, is technically a lot more of collaboration when it comes to work. So now that also gives me a counterpoint, and Kunal, if you can step in, because you've spoken about retail at the beginning. You said that for you the focus is on retail. Where do you see there is a big disconnect? And this is not to do with any of the brands which we are representing here, but overall across the industry, between this insight and the actual product, because it has to go through the ecosystem of an innovation, whether it's from a brand and it goes to a manufacturer or to even sourcing teams and then eventually the retail. So do you think there is still a disconnect for the overall industry?
So according to me, there are two major disconnects which I see. So most of the trends and all these analyses which we get are at a very macro level. And when we actually look into what the customer wants, is significantly varied according to different regions and stores, geographies and all of that. So what works in one metro city does not work in a tier 2. That is one part. And the second most challenging part which I see is speed. Today, speed is one of the biggest blocks which we face in the apparel industry. So by speed I mean is that the consumer is evolving so fast and their wants are evolving so fast, and whichever brand can adapt to that speed, I think is going to be a winner. So today, everybody since many years we are working with 2 drops. So it's 2 seasons, spring, summer and autumn, winter for India. But people who can go to 6 drops or 4 drops in a year, they will really, that disconnect will really stop. And what will happen is that you will also get to know that the risk of forecasting is such a huge risk. So that also comes down drastically when you have closer to the consumer needs and wants, and if you can give that kind of a drop.
So that would be data backed to
Absolutely.
identify this.
Yes, it has to be data backed.
Okay, but then Udit, I'll bring you into this. But do you think if we over rely on this data, while we're saying data will design sell, what are we doing with the intuitions which we all have? Because everybody understands their TG. Everybody talks about different generations, but then if we over rely on data, which is past, it is happening, it may or may not happen. Do you think as an industry we tend to over align and just forget the aspect of intuition or an experience which brings in, and then curate those products and design them essentially? Your take on this, on the data and over reliance on it?
So I think that data will definitely keep you in the game and ahead of the game. That's where the intuition comes in, where it's cross-pollination through other industries or through other products, right? Today we launched in Power Stretch, which is a knit category. You've seen over here, there's CRM selling Den Knit, and now knitted products coming into a category which was typically very structured, that required cross-pollination and innovation. Data wouldn't have told you that. You would have just keep making the same and making that better. So incremental growth will definitely come through data, but if you want to disrupt an industry and create an entire category or reinvent it and be the category leader, then you need to rely on creativity and intuition.
Perfect. So essentially what we are saying is that it's not about the insight we get or data we get, but speed, the alignment, and typically execution is what you mentioned will bring in the capability. But let's move into the product now, the final aspect dependent on time, because insights will only matter if it really translates into something consumers actually buy, not want, but what they actually buy. There's a huge difference between what they want and what they eventually will buy. So where do you think it will perform better? Where do you want to fit in this element of storytelling within the marketing framework, or your inputs to the brand owners out there?
So, storytelling, I personally feel that it's the most important part of, taking the product, differentiating the category actually, to various, because there are a lot of suppliers in the, denim ecosystem, there are a lot of, brands. So, unless and until you have a story where you can differentiate, like I'll give from my experience of last almost 3 decades, there's 3-4 stories which, quickly resonate, and I'm sure Aamir sir being part of the same system would agree, like there was this jog jeans, story by Diesel, which happened almost 10-12 years back, and which actually created the entire disruption in the industry, and the trend changed from a basic, 3x1 twills to a knit denim. Or maybe this same Levi's, PET bottle recycle concept, where, they had this global story where all the VMs, etc. had, very well defined recycled poly, that they were the first one to do it. Traveler jeans from Banana Republic, or maybe that Akshay Kumar rough and tough shrink to fit campaign.
Yeah.
So these are 3-4 stories which any denim lover would easily resonate even after say 30 years. So it's very important on how you differentiate. Like for us, we are into fabric selling. So there are 2 ways of selling a product. We can just market it as a 12-ounce 200 rupee product, or maybe we can highlight the USPs. It's a comfort stretch, super dark indigos, 16 dip, 12 dip. So that's what create value, and it increases the perceived value to the customer.
Kunal, you were talking about insights earlier. Now I'm just following up on what Ashish just mentioned. Have you seen always the insight-led products, the consumer insight-led product, I would say for you, they've always performed better, or they still fail because even if the strong data you capture, do you still see products failing because of that?
No, so we have generally seen in our brand, we have generally seen that an insight-led product, if it has got the product is made by the correct insights, they will definitely have stronger sell-throughs, and stronger sell-throughs means lower discounting, and definitely they will have better replenishment. So for us, that is a winner, definitely. So if we get the right insight and if we follow that, this is something which we definitely see in that trend, that they will definitely have a better. So for us, sell-through is everything. And if the product has a better sell-through, means you are going to, in this discounting world today, if you have lower discounting on a product, it just makes it a winner.
Aamir sir, just to his point, now with your experience, we still see products failing. We have insight, data-led product, we still see them failing. So what according to you is, will a product fail because just it wasn't positioned right? Even if it was insight-led, do you think it will still fail if the collaboration you spoke about, if it is not positioned right in front of the consumer? You spoke about the Levi's example, you spoke about the commuter jacket. So eventually the innovation and the product need had to be positioned also in a certain way, what Ashish also mentioned. Do you think they can still fail if that ecosystem is not built or is not aligned at all?
So if you really see in our industry, in this whole apparel and fashion industry, there's a very thin line, right? I mean, there's nothing like really something failing. For example, maybe, when there's a very high involvement product, for example, if there's a cell phone model, but in our industry, there's a very fine, maybe something sells less, right? There's nothing, I won't call it a absolute dismal failure in our industry. Maybe if something is selling 60%, something which is not doing very well might sell 50%, 40%, right? So because the investment is not as high, let's say when I'm talking about the fabric bit. So in a collection you have multiple products. So that's one is this whole bit. But yes, I mean if you have done something which is absolutely against the sort of existing needs that the consumers have, and then it fails, and if you don't position it well, then this positioning bit is extremely important, because for your customer to understand what are you up to, you have to bring it. You have to be clear that what are you up to, and then why are you doing it, and then who's your audience to go to that. Say for example, then how do we communicate? So we said, okay, what is premium, right? Let's say, so we said Formula One racing is a very premium racing event. So we have come up with a line called Formula One line of denims, right? And then so the imagery, the communication, the product. So this whole sort of positioning is such, and then of course the product and the service has to live up to that positioning, right? So this positioning bit is extremely important. I will not say that if you don't position well, it'll fail, but yes, I mean it can impact the sort of the stature and the sort of acceptance of your product if you don't position it well. So it is important.
Perfect. So we've got 6.5 minutes. So there are 3 more pressing questions which I want each one of you to answer. So these can be a rapid fire, right? So one question and quick answers. Ashish will begin with that order itself.
Yeah.
So the first is one insight source which you think brands are underutilizing today.
I think it is, since as I said in the starting, there is a trends, insights change with geography, they change. So mistake with brand generally do is that they don't look at the regional taste. For example, again coming to our apparel industry, since the taste within the country also, the taste from north to south, from west to east is totally different. There are some pockets where you have those baggy fits, loose fits. Some pockets, as Kunal was saying, are still into straight and slim. So it's important to position your product. One example here again, the way or maybe you are the Uniqlos of the world, where you have that so much of engineering, so much of technology into the product, where the product speaks for itself and customer has a good recall. So otherwise, for all general brand, it has to be very, very specific in terms of fits, in terms of washes. So generally brands try to do this mistake, and that is where they might. So as I agree with Aamir sir, there's nothing called failure in our trade, but yes, they would be discounting, just to replenish. So that's the only hit which the brands take if they are not fully implementing the consumer insight.
Okay. Aamir sir, so one insight source which according to you brands still underutilize.
Well, this whole sort of brand landscape is so evolved that they are accessing. To be honest with you, I'll be lying if I say that there's something where they underutilize. I mean they are, but maybe within the whole brand ecosystem, somebody might be very good at using, let's say, technology and converting that into insights. Somebody might be less. Say for example, or somebody might be over ambitious. For example, I was talking to the to the brand head, to the sourcing head of one. I mean, it's not a good idea to name people, but I was talking to one sourcing head, and he said that look, we are working on using technology to the extent that we will crowdsource design. We'll eliminate design. We don't need designers. The whole design team is not required, because I'm getting continuously what is selling well, right? So what silhouette is selling well, what color is selling well, what graphic is selling well. So I can sort of use AI to use that and sort of have an AI engine which says, okay, do designs which are not patented, and go ahead. Yeah. Now that's really sort of taking it too far. But so different people are taking different sort of maybe some people are very high on using insights from one segment, consumer insights or technology, or let's say opinion polls. So it's a matter of degree. I don't think it is a case of underutilization, and it's more dependent upon that particular customer or that particular brand or that retailer.
So then if you think it's not underutilized, but is there any mistake brands still do while using this data, or they over rely on data? Is that a mistake sometimes?
So I would agree. See, this whole over relying of data, what happens is that if everybody starts using the same data, right, then the whole world is regressing to the mean, as they say, right? I mean, it's the same data, same AI engines, same everybody going and using the same thing, right? And culling out the same insights, then finally there are no uniqueness, right? There's nothing left, right? Because everybody's so you all regress to the mean, right? The whole world becomes that, right? So you'll have to have your own point of view. Say, for example, Steve Jobs, right? He was very clear. He said that his point was the consumer doesn't know what he needs. Suppose 100 years ago, you had asked a consumer that what do you want to travel? He would have said, I want a faster horse or a faster carriage. He wouldn't have said an aeroplane. So you have to have your own unique point of view as a brand for sure.
Now, coming to you, so one action you think teams across the entire value chain can take on immediately to ensure they have a success rate in terms of products? Just one advice which you would like to give to brands, to your businesses, to your teams, and external also.
So I feel that everybody should understand that today the leader for trends is WGSN. We have a large, we have a very large design team, and they travel the world. They refer to all these things. But when you actually want something which is standing out and gives you the best result, it is definitely a combination of a balance of style, comfort and price. So for me, if somebody knows and how to get that thing into the market well, and definitely all three combined with the best of regional preferences, I think that is a winning
So translating information really effectively is going to be the key.
Yes.
So Udit, one last take before we end and we maybe ask audience to pitch in. Where do you think data sits in the product process? Where do you think it starts? Where it should actually happen to make a genuine impact?
So today, especially in D2C, we're studying all kinds of data from your CAC to your LTV, etc. But I think that truly data sits in the supply chain, and being at a conference like this, the suppliers have the most number of macro data. They have not only my brand's data, but they have the data of repeat orders at the consumer, at the supply chain level. And I think that's very important. So it's important to coexist with your supplier. No brand can exist without a strong supply chain. This is why we're at such industry trade show events. And I think that the supplier and brand relationship is equally important.
Perfect. Thank you so much, panelists. We have less time. We might take a few questions. But I think for me, if I have to give one key takeaway from whatever I've heard today, data will not only doesn't create winning products, it's how the decisions are taken basis those data is what I understand. And brands, as some of you mentioned, will only win are the ones who can translate these insights into faster, precision-based and clear, confident product decisions eventually is what my key takeaway is. And thank you so much for your time. I hope
Thank
it
you.
was
Thank you so much.
meaningful for the audience as well. I don't know, Bhakti, if you have time, she's here. If you have any questions, etc. to take, happy to do so. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.